Little black girl helps millionaire fix his Mustang. When he sees the ring on her finger, his life turns upside down. The merciless late afternoon sun made the asphalt of the rural roads steam as Zoe Carter walked home from school. The 11-year-old girl slowed her pace when she saw the shiny red Shelby GT 500 Mustang parked on the shoulder, its hood up like a wide-open mouth. Her heart quickened, sensing an opportunity to prove her skills, but a flicker of fear warned her to stay cautious around this stranger. A white man in a suit that surely cost more than all the furniture in her house paced circles beside the car, yelling into his phone. "I don't care how much you charge for the tow. I've been stuck on this deserted road for 3 hours. I have a meeting with the governor in—" The man checked his solid gold watch. "Less than 2 hours, for God's sake." Zoe considered for a moment whether she should go on her way. Her Aunt Tasha always told her not to talk to strangers, especially those who seemed so obviously out of place, in a humble rural area where they lived, a predominantly black community 90 minutes from Seattle. But something about the man's desperate frustration made her stop. Zoe adjusted the weight of the worn backpack where she carried her books, and more importantly, the small toolkit her Uncle Malik had given her, a mechanic who insisted that everyone should know at least the basics about engines. "Excuse me, sir," Zoe called, approaching cautiously. "Need some help with your car?" James Caldwell, COO of Caldwell Ventures, and owner of half of Seattle's commercial real estate, turned in surprise. The irritation on his face quickly turned to condescension when he saw the small figure with colorful braids, faded shorts, and an MIT t-shirt that was clearly too big for her. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart, but this is a high-performance vehicle. I need a real mechanic." Zoe shrugged, stepping closer to peer under the hood. Her confidence masked a nagging doubt. Would this rich man dismiss her like so many others had? "My uncle has a garage and has been teaching me about cars since I learned to walk. I can at least take a look." Before James could protest, she had already dropped her backpack on the ground and was leaning over the engine with surprising confidence. "When did the problem start?" she asked, all professional. James sighed, realizing he didn't have much to lose. "The engine started overheating about 30 minutes ago, and then it just died. Did you smell anything sweet, like syrup?" James blinked, surprised. "Yes, now that you mention it. How did you know? Cooling system." Zoe pointed to a small puddle under the car that James hadn't even noticed. "It's leaking coolant, that's why it overheated." As she spoke, James watched the girl with growing curiosity. There was something strangely familiar about her. The way she furrowed her brow slightly in concentration, how her intelligent eyes scanned the engine methodically. A chill ran through him as he recalled a fleeting memory of a child he'd met years ago, her face now blurred by time. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Zoe. Zoe Carter." She held out her hand, stained with grease from the inspection. He shook it hesitantly. "James Caldwell. Nice to meet you, Mr. Caldwell. I think I can fix this temporarily." Zoe opened her backpack and took out a small metal case. "Uncle Malik makes me carry an emergency kit. You never know when someone might need help on the road." James watched, fascinated as the girl worked with impressive efficiency, locating the leak in the radiator hose and applying the special tape. "That should hold until you get to town," she explained, "but you'll need to add water to replace the lost coolant." It was when Zoe raised her hand to brush her hair away from her face that James saw it. A ring with an emerald green stone set in antique gold, held on her finger with thread wrapped around the base to keep it from slipping off her small finger. James' world seemed to stop. The sun glinted off the stone, reflecting an internal pattern he would recognize anywhere. A small crescent-shaped imperfection. A ring he had given 10 years ago to a little girl named Zoe at an orphanage called Bright Futures, days before it was mysteriously closed. His breath caught, a wave of guilt crashing over him for the promise he'd broken to that child. "That ring," James began, his voice suddenly trembling. "It's very unusual." Zoe looked down at her hand. "It was my mother's. I mean, my adoptive mother, Alicia. She died 2 years ago." A shadow of sadness crossed her face. "She said it was a symbol of an important promise. May I ask where Alicia got this ring?" Zoe shrugged. "She never told me exactly. She just said it belonged to someone special, and that one day I would understand its meaning. James tried to pull himself together, offering to drive Zoe home as a thank you. She hesitated only briefly before accepting. During the 20-minute drive, James asked seemingly casual questions about her life, where she went to school, how long she had lived there, who she had lived with since her adoptive mother had died. Each answer deepened his suspicion that this was no coincidence. "I live with my Aunt Tasha and Uncle Malik," Zoe explained. "They took me in when Alicia died." "Have you always lived here?" James asked, trying to keep his voice casual as he gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Since I was 3. Before that," Zoe hesitated. "Alicia didn't talk about it much. I know I was adopted from an orphanage called Bright Futures. It closed soon after." James almost lost control of the car. "Bright Futures? Are you sure?" "Yes. Why, do you know it?" James took a deep breath. "I did a long time ago." As they approached a modest but well-kept house, James stopped the car. Zoe thanked him and said goodbye, but before she could get out, he handed her a card. "Zoe, if you ever need anything at all, please call me." The girl accepted the card with a curious look and got out of the car. James watched as she ran toward the house, the rings sparkling in the sun. His hands trembled as he picked up the phone to call his private investigator. What Zoe couldn't know, as she waved one last time to the stranger in his expensive car, was that this chance encounter had just set in motion events that would reveal secrets kept for more than a decade. Secrets that connected a billion-dollar empire, a mysteriously closed orphanage, and a black girl with an extraordinary ability to fix broken things. If this story of unlikely coincidences and hidden connections has piqued your curiosity, be sure to sign up to find out how a simple ring would become the key to unlocking a web of power, prejudice, and a truth that would change lives forever. James spent 4 sleepless nights staring at enlarged photos of the emerald ring his investigator had captured, the jewel he had given little Zoe at the Bright Futures orphanage as a promise that he would come back for her, a promise he never kept. Each image deepened the shame of his betrayal, a vow abandoned under his father's pressure. In his office at Caldwell Ventures, he examined documents scattered across his desk. 10 years ago, his father, Edward Caldwell, had bought the Bright Futures property for a fraction of its value, citing financial irregularities. Coincidentally, James was named COO shortly thereafter. "Mr. Caldwell, Mr. Turner from Legal, is here with the Pinnacle Project documents," his assistant announced. The Pinnacle Project, a luxury complex under construction on the very site where the orphanage had once stood. James quickly tucked the reports away before Turner entered. "The Bright Futures acquisition documents are here," Turner said. "Although I don't understand why we're revisiting old business. Your father was quite specific about keeping these documents on file." "My father is retired in Arizona," James replied dryly, "and I run the company now." As he examined the documents, James discovered suspicious bank transfers and, more disturbingly, a list of children who had been reallocated when the orphanage closed. Zoe Carter's name was circled in red with a note, "Special case. Contact EC." His heart sank, realizing Zoe's talent was no accident, but part of a calculated scheme. His investigator, Ramirez, called with news. "I found Alicia Carter. Car accident 2 years ago. Brakes failed. Suspicious circumstances." "What about the adoption records?" "Missing officially. Zoe Carter never existed at Bright Futures." "Find out everything you can about her current family," James ordered. Meanwhile, Zoe was working in the small workshop behind her aunt and uncle's house. The place was her refuge. Tools organized on the walls, the comforting smell of oil and grease. "Did you manage to fix the old radio?" Malik asked, entering the workshop. Zoe smiled, lifting the 1960S radio. "I did it. I just had to reconnect a few wires." Malik affectionately ruffled his niece's braids. "You have a gift, girl. I've never seen anyone understand machines like you." "Uncle, do you think my mom would be proud? Alicia was so proud of you she could have burst." Zoe, she twirled the ring on her finger. "I met a rich man the other day. His car broke down and I fixed it. He recognized my ring." Malik froze. "What man?" "James Caldwell. He gave me his card." Zoe showed them the card. "He seemed strange when he saw my ring." A shadow of fear crossed Malik's face, recalling Alicia's warnings about powerful men with dangerous secrets. Malik's face paled. He exchanged glances with Tasha, who appeared at the door. "Zoe, dear," Tasha said tensely, "remember when we promised to tell you the truth about Alicia when you were older? I think that time has come." That night, Zoe heard the hidden story. How Alicia, a nurse at the orphanage, had run away with her when the orphanage suddenly closed. How they had changed their names and gone into hiding for years, always looking over their shoulders. "Your mother left this for you," Tasha said, handing her a yellowed envelope. "She made us promise to give it to you only if someone from the Caldwell family showed up." With trembling hands, Zoe began to read. "My dear Zoe, if you are reading this, someone has found you. There are things you need to know." At James's apartment, Ramirez called again. "Sir, someone else is investigating Bright Futures. A reporter named Marcus Hayes." "What does he know?" "Quite a lot, and he has a theory about why your father was interested in certain children at the orphanage, specifically children with unusual talents." James's stomach churned, suspecting Hayes was closer to the truth than he was. The next day, a black SUV pulled up in front of Zoe's school. Two men in suits watched as she left with her friends. "Is that her?" "The girl with the emerald ring." "Yes. Mr. Caldwell Sr. wants to see her immediately." What they didn't know was that Malik was parked across the street. He took out his cell phone and dialed a number Alicia had left for emergencies. Marcus Hayes. "It's about Bright Futures," Malik said. "And a girl with an emerald ring. I found the proof you're looking for. At Caldwell Ventures." James stared at his father, Edward, who had flown in from Arizona without warning. "What's this about reviewing the Bright Futures documents?" Edward demanded. "I thought that matter was closed. I found Zoe Carter, Dad, the girl with the emerald ring." Edward paled. "So what?" "Just another orphan. What matters is Pinnacle Project. Billions are at stake. What was so special about that girl?" Edward laughed dryly. "Don't you really understand what's at stake? Some children are valuable. They have talents that can be exploited." "She fixes things," James said slowly. "She can look at broken machines and just understand them." Edward's smile was icy. "Think of the military applications, the patents, the power. Why do you think we bought that orphanage?" What neither Caldwell realized was that Zoe was already reading Alicia's letter, discovering the truth about her past and her special talents, and more importantly, discovering why the emerald ring was so valuable. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, but a key to documents that could bring down an empire. The letter revealed Alicia's fear that Zoe's gift was being hunted, a truth that ignited Zoe's resolve to confront her past. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. On one side, a powerful corporation ready to protect its secrets at any cost. On the other, an 11-year-old girl with an extraordinary talent and a ring worth far more than its weight in emeralds. Between them, a man trying to decide which side of the story he wanted to be on. The conference room on the 45th floor of Caldwell Ventures was buzzing with nervous executives. Edward Caldwell had called an emergency meeting, his normally controlled face now contorted into a mask of fury. "Where is my son?" Edward demanded, pounding the massive glass table. "James should have been here an hour ago." As if summoned by his words, the double doors swung open. James entered calmly, accompanied by a woman in a suit whom no one recognized. "Sorry I'm late, Dad," James said with a calmness that made Edward frown. "This is Federal Prosecutor Elaine Harper. She has some questions about Project Vanguard." Edward's face paled. Project Vanguard, the code name for the secret program to identify and exploit children with special talents. A name that should never be mentioned in public, let alone to federal authorities. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Edward hissed. James walked over to the large screen on the wall and connected his laptop. "Something I should have done a long time ago. The truth about Bright Futures and the other 6 institutions you've closed down over the last 12 years. The lights went out, and the screen came to life with documents, photographs, and reports. Detailed records of 52 special children identified, tested, and exploited by Caldwell Ventures. "You stole confidential documents." Edward tried to regain his composure. "That's corporate crime, industrial espionage. Documents evidencing far worse crimes," James replied. "Unauthorized experiments on minors, falsification of adoption records, bribery of public officials, intimidation of witnesses." A video began playing on the screen, security footage from 10 years ago, a young nurse, whom James now knew to be Alicia Carter, fleeing in the middle of the night with a child in her arms. Next, a clip of Edward instructing security guards. Find her. The girl has significant military potential. We can't lose her. 3 Bright Futures employees died in accidents in the weeks that followed, James continued relentlessly, including Alicia's brother, who had started asking questions. You have no idea of the implications, Edward began, but was cut off when the doors swung open again. Zoe Carter entered, accompanied by Uncle Malik and a man carrying a professional camera, Marcus Hayes of the Seattle Times. Zoe, James said softly, you didn't have to come. Yes, I did, she replied with surprising dignity for someone so young. Alicia always said that one day I would have to face the men who made us run. Edward looked at the girl, his expression shifting from shock to cold calculation. So, you're the prodigious Project 19. I didn't imagine you'd be so small. And you're the man who killed my mother, Zoe replied, her gaze unflinching. Her brakes didn't fail by accident, did they? Edward smiled, regaining his confidence, proving anything would be impossible. And you're forgetting who I am. One phone call and all of this disappears. That's when Zoe opened her backpack and took out the emerald ring. With deft fingers, she turned the stone, revealing a secret compartment. From inside, she took out a tiny device. Alicia was smarter than you thought, she said. This is a storage device, she hid in the ring. It contains backup copies of all the Bright Futures records, including recordings of your meetings with military doctors about harnessing children with enhanced cognitive abilities for strategic applications. Edward Caldwell, for the first time in his life, was speechless. This is being broadcast live right now, Marcus Hayes explained, pointing to his camera, our studio, and directly to social media platforms. Over 15,000 people are already watching. James walked over to his father, keeping his voice low. It's over. The prosecutor has a deal for me. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. As for you, well, we'll let a jury decide. As federal agents entered the room to arrest Edward Caldwell, Zoe approached the man who had destroyed so many lives. My mother taught me that broken machines can be fixed, she said calmly. But broken people need to fix themselves. I hope you get that chance in prison. Edward was led away, his empire crumbling live for the world to see. In the days that followed, Caldwell Ventures' stock plummeted. Investigations revealed decades of unethical practices, illegal experimentation, and systematic corruption. James watched it all with a complex mix of relief and regret. He had lost his family and his inheritance, but he had found something more valuable, his integrity. In the courthouse, as Edward awaited his preliminary hearing, Zoe approached, James on the steps outside. What happens now? She asked, the emerald ring sparkling on her finger, no longer a symbol of secrets, but of truth revealed. James looked out at the city skyline, at the skyscrapers that had been built with money stained by exploitation and suffering. Among them the gleaming Caldwell building, which would soon lose its name. Now, he said, we rebuild. Not just buildings, but lives. What none of them could have predicted at that moment was how that rebuilding would transform not just their lives, but an entire community. An empire built on exploitation was crumbling. But from the ashes, something new and unexpected was about to be born. Something that would forever change the way the world viewed exceptional talent in unlikely places. 6 years have passed since the day Zoe Carter exposed the truth about the Caldwell Empire. On a sunny spring morning, she walked through the halls of a newly opened Carter Center for Young Inventors. A sprawling complex of labs, workshops, and classrooms built on the same site where the Bright Futures orphanage once stood. The sensors in the West Wing are still malfunctioning. Zoe, now 17, told the group of engineers following her. Her experienced eyes identified problems in complex systems with the same ease with which she had detected a leak in a Mustang's radiator years ago. At the back of the center, James Caldwell talked with investors. His suit replaced by jeans and a button-down shirt. The former billionaire heir had donated his entire personal fortune to found the Vanguard Initiative. No longer an exploration project, but a program dedicated to identifying talented young people from marginalized communities and providing them with opportunities. We discovered 27 children with exceptional talents just this quarter, James explained. Each one receives a full scholarship and personalized mentoring. No contracts, no exploitation, no secrets. James's transformation surprised many, especially former executives at Caldwell Ventures. The man who had once been heir to an empire built on exploitation was now dedicating his life to repairing damage and creating genuine opportunities. "Zoe is about to publish her 4th patent," said Malik, who now ran the Sense Engineering program. UW, MIT, and Stanford are already fighting over who will recruit her. On the Sense main wall, an exhibit documented the entire story. Photographs of the orphanage, newspaper clippings about the fall of Caldwell Enterprises, and a headline that changed everything. Caldwell Empire collapses after teenage revelations. Meanwhile, in a medium-security federal prison, Edward Caldwell stared at the walls of his cell. The tycoon who once controlled billions and manipulated lives now spent his days in confinement, abandoned by former allies. His fortune confiscated, his name forever tarnished. "He refuses to participate in any rehabilitation program," a guard commented. "He still believes he'll get out of here and rebuild everything." The arrogance that had been his trademark was now just a sad caricature, an old man clinging to dreams of power that would never come true. That night, the Carter Center held its first major graduation ceremony. 15 young people from disadvantaged communities had completed the intensive 3-year program, each with job offers or college scholarships in hand. Zoe, still too young to graduate but already recognized as a mentor by her older peers, took the stage to give a speech. "When I was 11, I fixed a stranger's car on the side of the road," she began, twirling the emerald ring on her finger, now a symbol of transformation, not of secrets. That small act of generosity had exposed a web of exploitation, but it also paved the way for something new and better. James watched from the back of the auditorium, his eyes watering. The girl who had destroyed his old world had, in fact, inspired, given him a purpose that no fortune could buy. "My adoptive mother, Alicia, used to say that broken machines can be fixed, but broken systems need to be redesigned from the ground up," Zoe continued. "That's what we're doing here. Not just fixing what was wrong, but building something entirely new." The next day, Zoe received an unexpected letter. The sender, Victoria Caldwell, Edward's daughter, who had renounced her family name after the scandal and now worked as a federal prosecutor. "We found 6 more orphanages with programs similar to Bright Futures," the letter read. "Thanks to your testimony and the evidence you gathered, we've been able to identify and protect 42 more children. Some have talents like yours. When you're ready, they'd love to meet you." As Zoe read the letter to James, Uncle Malik, and Aunt Tasha, a sense of closure hung in the air. What had begun with a chance encounter on the side of the road had become a quiet revolution, transforming not only their lives, but an entire system that had thrived on the exploitation of the vulnerable. "You know what's ironic?" James said. "Edward always said he was building a legacy. And he did, just really not the way he imagined it." Zoe looked out the window at the children playing in the center's gardens, free from the kind of manipulation that had nearly defined her own destiny. "Real power is never in the buildings or bank accounts," she replied. "It's in the ability to make a difference in other people's lives." That evening, as the sun set over the painted Carter Center, a new sign was unveiled at the entrance. "Every talent deserves to flourish. Every child deserves freedom." It was a promise for a future built on the foundation of a past they refused to repeat. If this story of courage, resilience, and transformation touched your soul, be sure to sign up for more stories about how small acts of courage can change entire systems, and how true reparation isn't just about punishing evil, but about building something better in its place.